All right, welcome back. Today's show, I've got my friend Nick Brady out of Columbus, Ohio. He's got a service business. We've actually looked at a business to partner on together, and it ended up falling apart. But wanted to have him on the show. I know he's got this is our first, I believe, first guest that owns a service business that's outside of real estate. So excited to learn about his story and kind of hear what he's doing. So Nick, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing right now?
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. So right now I own a couple of businesses. We do commercial and residential concrete polishing and epoxy. And you touched on, you and I kind of looked at a general contracting business. About 2 months ago, I was approached by someone who worked for a national general contracting construction company, and he approached me to basically start a construction company with him where, I own 51%, he owns 49%. And it was kind of just a right timing kind of thing. I hired him as my director of sales and for my one business, Concrete Flooring Solutions, where we do commercial concrete polishing, which led into the amount of contacts I have in the commercial industry and the contractors that he has. He actually approached me to start a construction company from scratch. And really, we're 2 months in, but we started out really just filling the gaps for these projects that my company's already doing, which is basically, we work with a lot of builders, large general contracting companies, and we basically fill the gap for them. So it worked out nicely. So we do the floors for all the U-Haul self-storage facilities in Ohio. We hold the contract for all of the corporate Raising Canes in the Midwest and corporate Chipotles in the Midwest. So with those, I have a very good relationship with the people who manage those projects. We basically approach them to, hey, do you have any gaps filled, this and that? And we're doing a large portion of their renovations in the Midwest now. It spiraled very quickly. Same thing with, we got the contract for Cube Smart self-storage facilities. So a lot of work there in different avenues. So that's really what I'm doing now. 3 main businesses: garage flooring solutions, concrete flooring solutions, and then a construction company, which is Brady World Construction. So just staying busy, man. It's constant.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear too. And it sounds like it's similar. And we'll get in your story, but it sounds like similar to the 9 to 5 that I had, where it was electrical contracting company. We did service, and then the owner was approached by another gentleman that had a small handyman business, and it was easy. I was a salesman. It was easy for me to sell because, like you said, you've got all the contacts, and as long as you're a good contractor, vendor, whatever, they're going to continue to reach out to you, and you're going to find that they've got issues everywhere. And any type of handyman or contracting business, you can fill in all those gaps. And it's as long as you can find the people to do the work, like the work will just fall in your lap. So that's awesome to hear.
And that's really what it is. And that's kind of our unofficial slogan, if you will, is, we fill the gaps. We're not taking on massive construction projects, at least not yet. The goal is to eventually get into some development, buy some land, and do some contractor garages and, things like that. Really just because there's a huge need in our area. As you're probably familiar, we live probably 20 minutes away from each other. But for example, when I moved into the building I'm in now, which is about 8,000 square foot facility, it's probably, 1,500 square foot office and the rest warehousing. I was on a waiting list for a year and a half, and it was just, I couldn't find anything within 20 minutes of any quality that I'd wanted to move into. So I put my name down and filled out a lease a year and a half before we moved in. It's such a high demand thing that there's not enough of it around. So contractor garages, flex space, office warehouse, I see a huge need for. And eventually the goal is to start developing those. I was actually looking at land this morning, and I may pull the trigger on a piece, but we'll see.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I want to get into that too. So let's rewind. So let's go wherever, after school, whatever. What did you do once you got out in the real world and transition and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I, from Columbus, Ohio, I went to Ohio State University, graduated from there, got a job out of college. I never really.
What was your degree in?
So my degree was business communications.
Okay.
So I was one of those guys who was, was never really good at school. It was something that, my parents kind of pushed on me, and I figured, all right, well, I might as well get a degree now. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Didn't have a special.
And I don't want to interrupt, but it just hit me. Why? And I think I've talked about it before on shows, but why do you think? Because obviously you're an entrepreneur. I am too. So two people on the show here, both entrepreneurs, both didn't like school and I didn't put any time and effort. So why do you think? What's the correlation there between people that don't do as well in school and entrepreneurs? Why do you think that happens?
Well, I'm sure you heard the saying, the A students work for the C students, and it couldn't be more true in my case and probably yours as well. It's what I found was I was always the kid who I always felt like I was intelligent, but I was never very smart, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I could learn things, I could figure things out, but not the traditional way of people learning. I'm
like street smarts, people would call it.
Exactly. Maybe. Yeah. So I always tell people I'm very intelligent, but I'm not very smart,
Yep.
Thank God for audiobooks. Otherwise I'd never read a book in my life. But, with that said, I just never learned the same as other kids. And it just, part of it might be dyslexia. I'm not dyslexic in the sense that, I mix words around or letters around. It's more so for me, I always had to start a sentence in the middle of the sentence, read to the end, and then start at the beginning and go to the middle. I don't know why. Yeah, it's just how my brain works. I still do it to this day. I don't know why I do that. I don't know if it's me trying to jump ahead and see if I can figure it out and then realize I can't and starting over.
Right.
Numbers, same way. Numbers I actually do mix up a lot. So my office manager has to check me on a lot of things because typically if I'm writing a phone number or a dollar amount down, it's typically wrong. So that may have had something to do with it. It may have discouraged me in a way where, I never took school very seriously. But I think, kids in school who maybe don't have the book smarts or, may not be getting the A's or B's in school. They're not dumb. They just learn a different way. And, I realized that, early on in business that I always thought I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that at an early age. But realistically, I know now that you can learn anything. I mean, literally anything. So it got me through college. I switched my major a couple times. I started out in aviation. So I flew planes for a year, my sophomore year, realized that it would be a very expensive path to go down. Not to mention if you don't have, jet engine experience, it's going to be a long road for you to get to a commercial airline or unless you go military, something like that. So I changed my major there. I switched to, I think, exercise science, thought about maybe being a physical therapist, realized I didn't like school as it was. I didn't want to do additional school on top of that. Switched a couple times, landed on business and business communication. At that point I was almost 5 years in, still didn't have a major established. So let's see, what's the quickest path out of here? So I did business communication. It's really communications degree with a focus on business. And interestingly enough, what I realized early on was I was probably 8th, 9th, 10th business class. And I realized that these business classes are not teaching anybody how to start a business. They are strictly teaching you how to work for a business. Right. It was like a light bulb moment that if I ever wanted to start a business, school was not going to help me do it. And not necessarily that I even really wanted to start a business at that point. It hadn't even really crossed my mind. It was more that I wanted to figure out how business worked. I was intrigued by how it worked. So when I finally graduated, I took a job in Chicago. I worked for a recruiting company. I was making $30,000 a year, I think, living downtown Chicago. And I did that job for about 8 months. And I was a desk jockey working 10 hours a day. And I quickly realized that I'll never be a desk jockey ever again. So I took a job doing medical device sales. I did start out in spinal implant sales. And I did that for about a year until I switched to a company called Zimmer Biomet, which was hip, knee, and shoulder implant sales. I mean, quite frankly, you're just excuse my language, a surgeon's bitch is all you are. So, it was good. It was a good experience. Kind of jump into the sales world with that and learn some sales techniques and things like that. It paid really well. It wasn't fulfilling. I didn't feel like it was my purpose. I went on to do management. I managed 27 reps over in Cincinnati, Dayton, and Lexington. And the moment for me where I realized that I didn't want to work for anybody else anymore was really two things. The first one was my territory was doing over $35 million a year, and I was making less than 1%. I was working my butt off every single day, day in, day out, getting up at 3 a.m, driving down to Lexington, Kentucky, or Cincinnati or Dayton. And I was making pennies on the dollar. It just didn't make sense. So I had the kind of moment in my head where I thought, I can't do this forever. I'm just spinning my wheels, but what am I going to do? And around that time, 2018, my son was born, September 1st, 2018. And it's the day after he was born. So September 2nd, my company's calling me saying, hey, you need to be in Lexington, Kentucky tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. Like I won't be there. And they basically said, you need to be there. This is your job. And I said, look, my son was born. I'm literally still in the hospital. Like we hadn't even been discharged yet. And I looked at my wife and I was like, I'm done. Like I'm tapped out. So I called him back and I said, look, I'll happily give a notice, but I'm done. I'm out. And he was like, don't worry about it. We'll get the termination papers ready. And it was it wasn't a heated argument. We left on good terms. But at the end of the day, I think they had to have seen it coming. Probably I was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And at that point, it was kind of an easy decision for me. So again, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I had family. I have family in Rockford, Illinois, which is kind of no man's land in Illinois. It's kind of near up Wisconsin, Iowa area on the border. And it's a heavy industrial manufacturing town. And my family out there, my grandfather started a carpet cleaning business in 1980. And when my aunt took it over in 2004 or 2005, she saw a very high demand for commercial flooring applications, resinous floors, epoxy urethanes, things for heavy industrial manufacturing that can, withstand pallet jacks and skid steers and, heavy vehicle and foot traffic. So they dove into that. They grew a fairly sizable business for the small town of Rockford, Illinois. And I just got on the phone with her and said, hey, what's the barrier to entry here? How difficult is it to get into something like this? And she said, well, you're probably going to need about $100,000 liquid or take a pretty hefty loan to buy equipment. And I was like, man, I don't have that. I was making good money, but I didn't have ton of savings at the time. I had a wife and 2 kids. We just got married, just got a house and didn't really have much liquid reserves to throw at this. And so we had about 20 grand, saved up, and my wife said, you can take 5 grand from there and you can figure it out. So I took 5 grand and I bought a little concrete grinder and a little shop vac and started out doing, free Facebook marketplace ads basically. And started the LLC at September 11th, 2018. And I just started doing little garage floors here and there and sealing driveways. And, I made enough money to kind of propel me through the winter. And I didn't take a salary. I didn't take any draws. I paid myself when people paid me cash. No. And I just kind of really just scaled up from there. Fast forward a couple of years later, that company, which was called something else at the time, we've kind of switched gears a little bit to tailor more of a commercial clientele. So it's now Concrete Flooring Solutions. It was Columbus Concrete Coatings previously. And now we're doing, several $1 million a year, 18 employees, CEO, director of sales. I mean, it's fully automized, project managers, crew leads, crews. So it's become something pretty special. And I'm very proud of it, from where I started, and we're kind of just branching off now. So we have the residential company, which is Garage Flooring Solutions, which has developed into more of a subcontracting company. We have a couple crews that are just very, very good at these floors. And quite frankly, it's, I have enough guys to manage some of them, but the margins are very similar. So if I don't have to buy materials, I don't have to manage the crews and people, and they know what they're doing. And I'll take a subcontracting fee on it. And that's pretty much what it's become. Kind of a holdings company, if you will. I don't access the finances very much in there. But it's growing and it's developing, and now we're doing some construction work. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
man.
Awesome, man. And I want to get into a bunch of that stuff. I mean, story's awesome. I love hearing these stories. I could listen to these all day long. How much do you think sales helped you in being an entrepreneur?
It was the sales for me, not even so much sales techniques, but more interacting with other humans, like other people, figuring out how to have an effective conversation. We went through a couple sales reps in my company, and what I realized, the difference between a good and a bad sales rep is not the understanding or the process or the materials we're using. It's, can you connect to the person?
Yep.
And we have a absolute killer sales rep now. And it's, I've always, had pride in, having a 80+% conversion rate every time I did an estimate, and he'll probably pass me up, and I'm not going to tell him that, but he's an absolute killer. He's a beast. And it's so interesting the way he does it. It's similar to how I sell, but I never really realized it until I saw him doing it. And, he'll look around right when he gets to a property, or and he'll look around and see something he can connect with on this person. Mm-hmm. He'll have a whole 30-minute conversation with this person before he even goes into the floor. It's so funny because that's kind of naturally how I've done it, but I never thought of it as a sales technique. You're building relationships with these people. So by the time you're ready to sell, price is irrelevant at that point. They're already sold. They want to work with you. They see the track record of our company. They see the following we have in the community, and it's having a good relationship has been everything.
Yep. I never liked the term sales or salesman. In fact, I had, I think both companies that I worked at, I think both of them I requested not to have salesmen on there. It was either like a consultant or business development or whatever. It's just, it is sales, but I didn't like it because I did the same thing. To me, it was just, I'm going out to make friends. Right. Mm-hmm. And I did the same thing, like try to find something in common, something we can talk about, become friends as quick as possible. And like you said, at that point, price is irrelevant. And my guess is, now that you own your own company, you've got 18 employees, you probably do the same things with your employees. Is that right?
Yeah, it's to
a certain extent.
Yeah, it's I try to lead by example. We don't have any dictatorship here. It's a lot of respect. I pay my guys 20% higher than the industry standard. It's when people come work with us, they typically don't leave. Yep. My most senior guy has been with me since about 3 months after I started the business, maybe 6 months after I started the business. And my newest guy is, other than we have a couple guys that are about 3 months in, but everybody else has been with us for several years. I pay them well. They don't bring stress home with them. We do a lot of out of town work because we're regional with, the Chipotle's and a couple other contracts that we have. But they always get paid a premium for those, all meals paid for. The guys know that they can come to me if they have any kind of trouble, financial trouble, whatever it is. I've helped pay my guys' rents before, and I don't even ask to be paid back. It's not a loan. It's I value you. You know, you're a key member of this company. Whatever you need, I'm here for it.
Yep.
So they know they can always come to me. It's a pretty relaxed work environment. They know the expectations that I have for them. You know, our project manager holds them accountable. But at the same time, no one's ever getting yelled at. They'll never be scolded or treated like a child. You know, they have fun. They go golfing. They grab drinks together a lot of times, and they're all buddies. It's like a good old boys club, and it's fun, man. It's again, I bear the burden of the stress. I don't allow them to bear that burden. So
for sure,
it's a good dynamic.
That's awesome. Talk a little bit, especially those people out there that may be working a 9 to 5 and have thought about leaving. But obviously, and going back to schools, like we're not taught to kind of do business by ourselves, right? I mean, you talked about that in school where we're taught business, but it's not how to run a business. So talk about how it sounded like you kind of had one foot out the door, but you had that fork in the road after you had your kid where it was just like, these people are demanding way too much. I just had a kid. I'm done with it. I'm out. And you had nothing lined up, which is, I mean, most people would be like, dude, you're ruining your life right now. But obviously only 6 years later, and my guess it was sooner than that, your life drastically improved. Talk about that transition and just getting to that point.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't even tell my parents I quit my job and started my business until 6 months in. They actually found out from my aunt who I had that conversation about, you know, and, you know, my parents, my dad, they're very, very traditional. You know, my dad's an anesthesiologist in the medical field. And, you know, my mom's always stay at home mom. My dad is the mindset of, I don't care if you're a plumber, but you're going to be the most educated plumber. Like you're going to college. And if you want to be a plumber after that, great, you know, but you're going to be the most educated plumber in the world. So very traditional kind of, I don't want to say strict, but, you know, he has there's a way of life to be successful and there's no other way around it, you know? And, you know, it's just funny because I didn't let them know that I was, you know, quitting my high paying, you know, corporate job to start this business. And then they find out and I'm just, you know, busting my butt by myself. And I actually recruited my brother at the time, which they didn't know about, but doing garage floors. And they thought I was crazy. Honestly, they thought I was crazy. But when your back's against the wall, and at that time I had, you know, 2 kids, one of which was a newborn, a new wife, and I didn't have a choice. There was not a single time in my mind where I said, what if this doesn't fail? It was just, this is going to work. Like this is.
Why do you think you thought like that?
I didn't have an option. You know, I didn't have anything to fall back on. I could have gone back to the corporate world, but that wasn't an option for me.
Yep. You burned the boats.
I burned the boats 100%. I mean, there was no going back. Yep. If this doesn't work, I was going to find something else that worked. It's just, you know, I tell people like I have a friend who I got him a job with my Arthrex, that medical device company I worked for. And he worked there about a year before I left up until last year. So he worked there for about 5 years. And the whole time I was like, dude, like, you got to quit this place. He was miserable. He hated it. Finally, last year, he started his own window cleaning pressure washing business, and he's absolutely killing it. And he's like, dude, I wish I listened to you years ago. And it's just funny, man, because like everybody has expects this way of life where you go to school, you go to college, and you graduate, and you get this 9 to 5 job, and you grind for 40 years, and then you retire with X amount that barely gets you by. And then you look back on your life and you think, I just wasted over half my life looking at 4 walls and sitting in this cubicle and looking at this computer screen. And I just knew I couldn't do that. I mean, worst case scenario, I would have got a construction job slinging a hammer, you know? And it's just, yeah, it's for me, it's the time freedom. It's the financial freedom. You have a lot more stress, but it's different kind of stress, you know. Yep. No one's micromanaging you. No one's looking over your shoulder, you know, seeing what you're doing on a daily basis. You're not worried about losing your job. Yep. You know, you're worried about other things, you know, that may be even more stressful. You got to keep jobs on the schedule. The finances have to be airtight. Your books have to be clean. You're providing for 18 other people's lives, and helping them live their life to the best, and have to make sure that they get paid every time. Luckily for me, I never ran up a line of credit. I bootstrapped pretty much the whole thing up until last year. I did finance some equipment. So I have very low debt. We run pretty lean, which has been great. But yeah, man, it's just goes back to there's so many different ways to make money, and figuring out what suits you the best is what you should do. And if you want to pursue something else other than 9 to 5, just do it. Just don't look at it as I could fail. Look at it as I have no option but to succeed.
Yep.
And it puts you in a totally different mindset. For me, it was absolutely life-changing. I'm not the wealthiest guy in the world by any means, but my wife and kids, we packed up last week and went to Florida for 2 weeks. And the Airbnb we stayed at in Sandestin, Florida, said, hey, no one's booked. We stayed for a week, and then they said, no one's booked this for a couple more days. If you want to stay at a discounted rate, we're like, man, why not? It's being able to do those things. Or, I went golfing yesterday, and I'm not saying I don't work ever, but you have the freedom to make your own hours, create your own schedule, systematize your business in a way where it runs without you. And for a long time, it was me. It wouldn't function without me. And I heard that quote or that saying where someone said, if forget the fishing rule. You ever heard the fishing rule?
What's that?
Can you go on a fishing trip for 30 days without your phone and come back and your business is still running efficiently? Yeah. And, I can say now that, yeah, I can. This time 2 years ago, I could not say the same thing. So I heard that, and I literally tailored my business around that statement. Was, how can I systematize this business? Who can I put in place to operate this if I am no longer involved? And it runs like a well-oiled machine, but it took a long time to get there. So
no, that's awesome and very well said. Well, and I feel bad because I think a lot of times on here we kind of talk. I don't want to say down, but definitely we talk more up about entrepreneurs, right? And that's kind of what the show's about. But we need W-2 employees, and not everyone is entrepreneur. Obviously, like there's a small percent of the population that's entrepreneurs that are just built that way, right? It's probably struggled a little bit more earlier in life with school and stuff like that, and for whatever reason, entrepreneurs, it just that fits people like us. Not talking down to W-2s. Some of the most successful people in the world have W-2s. So, yeah, I feel like I kind of poke and prod of that a little bit. So I just want to say that. But I want to talk about like your first 6 months, year in the business where you're doing the work yourself. How were you juggling all that? And when did it really start to take off?
Yeah, honestly, that was the hardest part. They always say the first year is the hardest, which is absolutely true.
Well, most businesses fail, like, what is it, 98% within the first year? Something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we had a time probably 3 years in where, we were owed so much money, and I had to make payroll, and I was like, I don't really know what to do right now. I think the accounts got down to like 5,000. I had payroll in like 3 days, and luckily some paychecks came, or some checks came in. But it's like a lot of times people lean on line of credit for that.
Yep.
But yeah, there's been some tough times, especially early on where that first year I was doing everything myself for the first 3 months trying to figure things out. It was basically me doing the jobs. I'd leave a job, go do an estimate, come back and finish it. And constantly like that revolving door trying to figure out how I can do all these estimates. I mean, I was working 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day just to get by. And my wife would always say, like, are you always going to work like this? And I always told her, like, it's not always going to be this way. Like, I promise it's not always going to be this way. And
how was that compared to working at the medical device sales?
I was probably working actually a little more for my business hour wise than medical device, but we were building something,
right.
Whereas medical device, it's, I'm sitting in surgeries half the time, and I'm basically a glorified box opener for these surgeons. And
you're on a treadmill, basically.
Exactly, man. You're on a treadmill, and then after surgery, you're sitting in a small sterile processing room, putting instrument trays back together. There was no future, there was no purpose, there was no happiness there. I didn't feel like I was building anything. And when I started my business, dude, I was making, not peanuts for the first year. I mean, when I finally hired a guy 6 months in, he was making double what I was making, because everything I was making was going to him or reinvesting into the business. But I couldn't have been happier, honestly. Yeah. I didn't care how much we had enough to pay for our small house that we lived in at the time. 2 kids and a wife, and we were fine, man. We learned to live, with little, and eventually that grew. And it's funny looking back, man. And not to kind of switch gears here, but I'm going to throw a wrench into my whole story here real quick. The whole time from starting in college to, really 2017, I was addicted to substance abuse issues too. Mm-hmm. So I was, addicted to, painkillers and heroin. So it was a time for me that, I felt that there was no place for success in my life. And, it wasn't until I really sat down and evaluated my life and what I wanted out of it, where I realized that I had to make a change. And, I held a good job. I graduated college with substance abuse issues. I'm not the typical guy not the typical story that you hear of those issues. And,
highly functioning.
Until you're not, really, is what it was. It was bad. It was really bad, actually. I mean, I totaled several cars. I flipped a car going 75 on the highway. Should have died. And, a couple of those, moments kind of hit me so hard, where I finally just had a light switch moment where I was like, I'm done. Basically just locked myself in a room for 10 days, turned my phone off, and just went through it. And, been clean and sober ever since. I don't drink or anything. And it's been a total game changer. And the only reason I'm even bringing this up now is really to kind of, anybody who's listening here who's had, some kind of hardships in their life, it's not the end. And I debated even bringing this up. But honestly, it's a part of my story that I'm not ashamed of at all. I mean, it's totally molded me to who I am. And that may have been a factor in the level of success that I've, strived for. Now I'm married, 4 kids, and have, a couple of successful businesses. I don't look at it as like a success story. It's just the life I've lived. But I mean, in all reality, it's a success story that most people don't have, with the experiences that I've been through. And, a lot of people who I know from my past aren't around anymore, or if they are, they're, still struggling, or if they're not still struggling, they're working, 9 to 5 minimum wage jobs. And it just goes to show, like, you can have, your life can be at a certain point, and just incremental changes can, drastically change your entire life. Yep. And you just can't quit, you just got to keep moving forward, and one step at a time.
Yeah, no, well, I definitely appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate. And a lot of people know people that, that they're related to, or that they know have gone through it or going through it. I also think, and this is coming from Grant Cardone, he's got a book, I don't even remember what it's called, where he taught, or something, I don't remember, something about being addicted, like having an addictive personality is a superpower, because not everyone has that, right? Yeah. And as long as you can use that for good, it's amazing. Like the most successful people in any area, right? We're not just talking business, like life, everything. The most addicted, the people with the most success have some type of addiction. Just where do they channel that energy to? Mm-hmm. And obviously you've turned it from something that wasn't good to something that's now great. My guess is it probably overflows in other areas in your life too.
Yeah, man. I keep in the back of my head, I'm like, I could join the PGA Tour one day. But realistically, I shot an 85 yesterday, and that's the best I've ever shot. So I don't think the PGA Tour is calling me anytime soon. But same thing, man. It's like I get absolutely addicted. Like I get hooked on things, whether it's real estate, business, golf. It's a blessing and a curse, But if you channel in the right avenue, then it's definitely more of a blessing than a curse. I've learned how to manage it, and the curse is gone now. That was the kind of the past, and now it's channeling that addiction into positive things. My routine. I'm addicted to my routine. Like I get up, I get ready, take the dog out, work out every morning. Eat something real quick, go into work, and it's very, very much a strict routine. Get up at 5 to 5:30 every morning, and without a routine, someone who has an addictive personality like me, you have to have a routine. And if you slip out of it, it throws off your whole. It throws off everything. So it's been very important for me, at least.
So how do you, and actually we talked a little bit about this on the last show. How do you, and I don't know if I've got addicted personality or not. I probably have some in there. Dive into that. But I know when I go on vacation, the first day I'm usually okay. The second day I'm like a zombie, just mentally. And then I start to like snap into it, like, okay, now I know that I've got to do things to like fill my cup in a way, because I completely get out of my routine. So what did you do? You're just gone for 2 weeks, it sounds like. What did you do to stick with your routine?
It's very similar. I mean, the kids, are usually sleeping in a little bit, for the most part. My wife, she likes to run. She runs every morning. So we kind of alternate what time we're working out in the mornings. But when we're on vacation, my routine did slip a little bit. I still tried to work out every day. Something for me, what I do is, like, my kids are young. Well, 10-year-old, 4-year-old, 3-year-old, and 1-year-old. So, 2 of them take naps in the middle of the day. The other 2 kind of resting when we're on vacation. And it's a golf cart community where we're at. So it's funny. What I do is there's a lot of very, very nice houses around there. It's a big short-term rental community. And when the kids are napping or resting after morning beach day or a morning pool day or something, I'll take the golf cart and I'll drive around in those wealthy areas. And countless times I have seen people power washing their driveway or doing something outside. I'll just get out and I'll talk to them. Like this last guy I talked to, he's from Atlanta, has a multi-million-dollar house, and I basically just walked up to him. I said, "How did you get to where you're at?" He's probably 65 years old, retired. He was a high-level insurance guy, and just interested in hearing other people's stories. And it keeps my head on straight. I use vacations like that to kind of reset my mind, think about what I want for the future. I take those little golf cart rides, put headphones in, and I just think, how can I get here one day? When will I buy one of these houses? That's really not even the goal, is buying one of those houses, but how can I be at a level of success, 10, 15, 20 years from now? What steps can I take when I get back home, get back to work and get back to the drawing board? And
we just went to Palm Beach 2 weeks ago, and we're going to near Sandestin. Actually, when we get off the call, I want to talk to you a little bit about that. We're going near there in a couple of weeks. Actually, by the time this airs, we'll already be back. So, but yeah, that in my mind, that's kind of part of it, is draw inspiration. Right.
Man, absolutely.
If I can channel it right away in the inspiration, not kind of just like zombie mode, like, I got nothing to do. I think that's awesome, man. That's a great way to put it. Want to shift a little bit here. So obviously, you said you just started a new contracting business, which we can get into a little bit, but you said contractor garages as well. So real estate. I know you've looked at self-storage before. So why shift from service businesses to not necessarily shift, but now get into a different world?
So it's interesting. I came to a realization not too long ago where, I've been doing real estate for a couple of years now and mostly flipping houses, single family stuff. And I've wholesaled some houses. I don't consider myself a wholesaler by any means or stretch of the word. But I have wholesale houses really with plans to take on the project myself and thought, maybe I'm over leveraged right now in real estate, or maybe it doesn't fully make sense right now. Mm-hmm. And I'll pass it on to someone else who, can take on a project like that. My real estate has slowed down a little bit, somewhat due to the market, interest rates and things like that. But, really that's a portion of it, but I prioritized a lot into business. And what I realized lately was I need to really hone in on what I'm good at. Starting, developing, scaling business is something that, I take pride in being, fairly good at. And it was something that, I obviously learned from nothing. And it's things I've, learned and pieced together over time. But I am still active in real estate. I was looking to buy some, self-storage facilities. I had a couple were very close in contract and didn't, get past the due diligence period. That's still something I definitely want to do. Development has been something I've always wanted to do from a standpoint of, specific development. I'm not really looking to build a bunch of apartment complex or anything like that. It's things that are, functional to my life. Like I said, contractor garages. I know the demand for it is huge right now. There's less and less land, able to be developed in certain areas now. And, they're just land's getting more and more expensive. In Columbus, at least everything's moving outwards now, on the, Pataskala moving, Intel's coming in, things are getting eaten up. So during COVID, there was, so many companies or so many people started companies, started businesses, a lot of service-based industries, landscaping, whatever it may be, painting companies, power washing companies, and they have nowhere to store their stuff. Yep. A lot of them are just going to U-Haul facilities and just getting a unit, which is great. I started off with a very small space as well, but eventually as you develop, you're going to need an office. You're going to need, more warehouse space, and they just don't exist around town. I mean, in your area, in Powell, I know there's a couple, parks like that near downtown Powell and stuff like that. But in Western, we don't have that. Basically, where I'm at is one of the very few, unless you go off, Huntley Road or something, and those are outdated and old and small. So there's a huge need for these things around town, pretty much in every city around Columbus, and they just need to be developed. And I also have a kind of a different business plan when it comes to real estate. I don't buy for cash flow. I buy for appreciation. I play long term. I don't need the cash flow to live off of right now. You can cash flow a little bit, great, but I look at it as a long term investment strategy. So I evaluate deals a little differently if I am buying. So,
yep. Well, that's smart with getting in the real estate where it's almost a vertical integration, right? You already know that there's a need for your type of business in your area and all that. Like you're well versed in that niche in your market. So that's a smart move. It's awesome. Cool. Well, did I miss anything?
I don't know. I kind of jumped around a lot. So
that was good. Awesome, man. It's really good.
It was.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the last questions here. No, this is awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing your story. I've been glued. I mean, I'm not glued to other conversations, but I've been glued to your entire story, and it's super interesting to me and awesome to see where you've come to and where you're going. Yeah. So with that said, what are you better at than everybody else?
Oh man, probably at this point, delegation. Honestly, I know what I like to do. I know what I don't like to do. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at. So to get to the level of business that we're at, and again, we're not a huge company. There are companies that are way bigger out there than we are. But delegation has allowed us to scale to a level that when I started this business, I didn't even think we could get to. delegation allows you to have that time freedom. It's when you start a business, you don't automatically just have time freedom. Most businesses, you have less time freedom.
Yep.
Unless you set it up in a way where you can do the things that you want to do and go where you want to go, and things like that. So for me, delegation has been a huge skill that has been acquired over time. That it was honestly a realization that I had, where if I want to get to where I need to go to, I need to spend some money and pay people who are better than me at certain tasks.
Yep.
That's something I'm very good at. I feel that I'm good at hiring the right people and managing. On the flip side, I'll tell you exactly what I'm bad at. I'm bad at administrative work. I'm bad at computer work, and I don't like doing payroll, those kind of things. So again, it's boiled down to, I figured out what I like to do, figured out what I don't like to do, and delegating those specific tasks are what I've become, very good at.
Well, that's one, it's awesome that you know your strengths and your weaknesses, because I would say most people do not. And it's an underrated delegation is an underrated skill.
Yeah.
Right. Because how many businesses that we know, especially kind of the generation before us, they did everything. Right. Whether they liked it or not, good at it or not, they did everything. Yeah. And that's where your business suffers. Yeah. So delegation, and there's still businesses today. There aren't many businesses that can run, like you said, the fishing trip analogy. There's not many businesses that can run like that.
Yeah, or not effectively. And one thing I've learned is how to structure a business. And maybe next time we can hop on a call and kind of run through how I structured the business. Structured the bank accounts. There's a couple books that have really put things into perspective for me. Where I don't really utilize bank line of credit. I have my own. I run my own line of credit as my own bank, and we can kind of dive into that in the future or something. But I learned how to structure business in a way to be able to step away and do these things where it does run efficiently, and how I manage my bank accounts to how the business is structured. Which if anybody's interested, I'd love to go into that in a future time. But
yeah. For sure. Well, and we're going to get to where people can find you too. They can reach out that way. I guess really we already talked about what's next for you. Real estate, obviously you're building the contractor division. Anything else going on?
Oh man, 4 kids keeps me busy. So not much else other than that. Planning a couple other vacations, but just staying busy, man. Acquire some real estate. I have looked into buying some multifamily. I'm a part of a couple groups, real estate and business entrepreneurship groups that have been really good. But I would really like to purchase some self-storage facilities. I think that is on the horizon for this year. I'd like to at least close on one if I can, and then really look into buying some key land and getting into the development process.
It's awesome, man. So anybody that wants to reach out, whether they have questions or just want to reach out and connect, where can they find you?
Yeah, man, I'm not super active on social media. I know everybody says, do your social media, this and that. I have a Facebook. I don't use it often. I haven't posted since probably 2016. Same thing with Instagram. But you can find me there. It's N_Brady08 is my Instagram, and I'll lean into social media here maybe here soon. I need to. I'm about to pick your brain on that actually.
No, I have no idea about social media. Don't pick my brain.
Yeah, the whole podcast thing. I thought about starting a podcast. It's work in progress. Maybe one day. But
man.
I'm kind of one of those guys where, I've always had the goal of being the wealthy guy that nobody knows is wealthy. Kind of look like a blue collar guy, and at the end of the day, some of the wealthiest guys I know are blue collar guys. But they can find me on Instagram at that tag, or feel free to link my number if you want. If anyone wants to shoot me a call or text, I'm an open book. I
don't want to put your number out there.
Yeah, I absolutely love talking business, talking real estate. I will share my knowledge just to about anybody who wants to hear me, but I'm a super nerd when it comes to that. So if you get me talking, I'll talk for hours. So just expect to be sitting there for a while and listening to me yap on.
Which is awesome. Well, and you said you're a sharing guy, which you are. We've talked. I forget what it was. I feel like it was on Instagram. Unfortunately, I was scrolling it. It was either yesterday or today.
Mm-hmm.
I forget who it was. I want to say it was what's his name? Bradley. I think it was him. I could be wrong. Anyways, they were talking about sharing. No, it wasn't him. It was I don't know. It was someone that was working out, right? They were jacked and they didn't want to get on social media to basically explain how they got so big and how they're in great shape and all this stuff. And the guy that was talking to him was like, listen, he was like, look at all the posters on your room or your workout room, whatever. He had like Schwarzenegger. He had like all these guys that were big power lifters that inspired this guy to go and become a power lifter. And this guy that was talking to him was like, listen, you're being selfish by not putting yourself out there because you don't know who you can inspire.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's a really good point. So not that I'm pushing into social media, but all it takes is one person, right? That's true. Like even this podcasting thing is, I hope it helps one person somewhere. And it's a weird world, even social. It's a weird world where you're probably not going to get feedback, and someone's not going to be like, hey, you really helped me through this. I appreciate it. Or you inspired me or whatever. You'll get it every once in a while, but for the most part, people don't really reach out with you for that. But it happens, right? Like there are definitely podcasts, even that reel that I just told you about. I don't even know who it was that said that, but it definitely inspired me.
Yeah. It's true, man. It's true. And that's one of my goals, always has been, especially someone who's maybe struggling with substance abuse issues. I would love to get into some, treatment facilities and just share my story with people, give someone, hope, if nothing else, show them that it's possible. Yep. So yeah, man, that's a good point. It only takes one person to change their life. So for sure. I'll reevaluate.
Awesome. Well, this is an awesome show. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you sharing everything, business, your life story, all that. Appreciate you coming on, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for following, subscribing, and listening to this episode of the Do More podcast hosted by John Farling. To learn more or ask questions, go to l4investing.com.